last time. And so now that we are recording, my goal for today is we're going to go through and look at Blackboard to make sure everybody's on the same page about what is due. And then I am going to punt a little bit and re-strategize over what compared to what I did in the previous or in the first session, because it brought some stuff up, and then we will work through it together as a class. So we may get to breakout rooms today, or we may not, I don't know. So just hang with me. Please ask questions as we get going. I'm having a hard time watching the chat, so I'm not even gonna pull it up. So please just voice your opinion if you have questions. All right, I'm going to go ahead and switch gears. Let's look at Blackboard together really quickly, and then I'm going to take you through a short lit searching exercise. All right, so, oh good, and everything is, well, we'll do it this way. I got to get signed back in. All right, so it's crazy to think that we are in week 6 of the semester, but we absolutely are. And this week we've got 2 major things that are due. It is a quiz that has to do with new lecture material that's all about principles of experimental design. And so those 3 principles you guys have already been exposed to. They are replication, randomization, and local control. And so in this week's lectures, we dive more deeply into those principles. And next week, we will be starting into the statistics section of the class. And so principles of experimental design is a big step for us, because we're now moving out of all the pre stuff that we did, trying to get our mind wrapped around developing objectives into actually carrying out a research project. And so the way that a study is designed is never developed independently of how the data will be analyzed. Those 2 things very much are handled together. All right, so we're going to learn about them together. We're learning about principles of experimental design this week. We're going to step into statistics next week. All right, so you have your quiz for experimental design is due Friday, end of day, and so you can see that right here. The other assignment that is also due is the part 1 of the research paper assignment. All right, and so this is just an outline of the introduction section that includes the lit review. All right, so that is what is due. I'm now going to kind of switch gears and talk through finding literature. And you guys may already have a good idea of how to do this. I just want to show you a couple of resources that you can use to go out and find peer-reviewed journal articles. So the first tool that we can use is Google Scholar. So again, Google Scholar, not Google, right? So Google Scholar is going to search the 21,000 plus peer-reviewed journals that are actually out there in the world. It's also going to capture information from the patent office and from some extension publications and textbooks as well. And so, but it is not going to catch a Facebook post. It is not going to catch somebody's blog post, etc. All right, so what we are going to do as we start working through trying to find literature about our subject is we're going to enter into the search bar keywords, and those keywords are going to be separated by commas. All right, so you guys, this is your chance to talk to me. So let's look at 3 keywords that we could use to find literature about composting. So what are those keywords? Just shout them out.
Maybe like off-all compost.
Off-all? Okay, what else?
Can that be like the bone in or bone out?
Okay, bone in. Okay, so that's 3. So let's see what we get. We get about 41 different results, and that's actually really good. I was expecting more, but we were pretty specific in what we were asking Google Scholar to search for. All right, so you can see what came up there is like books, so excerpts out of books. We've got some random website stuff that has come up as well. Oh, that's why it's actually in the Veterinary Research Journal. And then we've got some peer-reviewed journal articles, which is great. So if we were to look at, let's see what this effects of chicken thing is. Yeah, so this was published in Veterinary Research, which is, or the Veterinary Research Forum, which is a peer-reviewed journal that is specific to our veterinary community. And it doesn't look like, or at least I don't see anywhere where I can grab, oh yeah, actually it is. So I can actually get the PDF article through this link here. And hopefully it takes us there. It does. If for some reason we weren't able to get that article, what I could have done is copied the article title, and then went to a library resource, which I'll show you in just a second. All right, so this article was published in 2020, so it's fairly recent, which is great. And it is capturing a study that was done by a research team in Iran. And so you can see it's got the similar version of what we are writing as the class. So it's got an introduction section, it's got materials and methods, results, discussion, and then acknowledgements and references. And so the information that's going to be contained in this article, if once we go through and use kind of that journal club assignment to capture all the information out of that, or out of this study that we need, then we can go through and look at 1 or 2 sentences that this study actually found, and we can use that in our outline for part 1. All right, so let me just go back to the Google search really quickly. Let's come up with some other keywords here. Let's look at something more general. So let's do compost, animal carcasses, and let's do mortalities. All right, there we go. Now we got about 5,600 results. So these are more general terms that are going to result in more total hits with our search. All right, so if we were interested in this first article here, the biosecurity of on-farm mortality composting, this publication was in the Journal of Applied Microbiology. And this is actually a review article. And so review articles do a few things for us. They actually give us kind of a background of what all the research that has been done about a study. So in this case, on-farm mortality composting. So this might be a really great article for you guys to start with, okay? You can cite review articles, okay, but we are not writing review articles. We're writing a scientific study article. And so review articles and articles that publish results about a specific study are very different things. All right, so it looks like I might be able to get the PDF here, but let's just say that for some reason I didn't have access to it. What I could do is copy this, the title of this article, and go to the Miram Library, so our Chico State Library page. So let me just show you where that's at. So on our homepage, the library page is up here in the very top right-hand corner. And our library has done a really great job the last few years getting us more access to a lot of journals. And so they're using this tool called OneSearch, which is really good. And so what you can do is you can just paste the title of your journal article in there and search for it. And hopefully it's going to come up. And because you are signed in to your library account, if the full text is available, it should be able to take you right to it. So Google Scholar and OneSearch in the Chico State Library are two really good resources to use for finding literature about a subject. All right, so let me stop sharing there. Can I answer any questions for you guys about how to lit search or the tools that we can use to lit search? So this is all something that I'm assuming you guys have done before because we're seniors. I'm hoping that you've done this for term papers or, other classes before. And so in past semesters, it has been kind of a waste of time to do an entire day on the lit review aspect of this because you guys already have a really good understanding of it. And so if that is not the case, please, I want to help you and I can give you some tips. So just let me know. All right, but if you guys are good with this, just give me a thumbs up with emojis or reactions or whatever. All right. And I'm going to assume those of you guys that don't have thumbs up, you guys are going to ask me questions later, okay? Thank you. All right, let's talk about part one. There was some good discussion and a lot of confusion around or in the first section, okay? And I'm assuming that that is the case here as well. Let me preface this whole discussion by saying that this is the messy part of research. Okay, so we've got to start by gaining knowledge about a subject before we can actually conduct a research project about it. So that is where all of these exercises on creating an outline, developing hypotheses, developing objectives has really come out of. Okay, so if you are like some of your other fellow classmates and are very confused, you don't understand where this is going. I think one of the comments that came up in the last session was that there was a student or two that thought that they were doing the work for me. And that is all very, very real. Okay, so it absolutely may feel like that. And so just please keep in mind that I'm trying to teach you guys a new skill. Okay, so this is the part where you guys become really active learners and you ask questions if you aren't clear about things. All right, so on that note, I want to have a kind of a I did this in breakout rooms in the last session, but I think it could be really beneficial for us to do as just a whole group today so we can capture this discussion on the recording. All right, so what I want to do is I'm going to ask probably 5 or 6 people to share the themes that you guys came up with for pre-part 1 last week, okay? So if you need to pull up that document, please feel free to do so right now. And Brenna, I'm going to start with you if that's okay. And so you can just start with like theme A was this, theme B was this, theme C was this, okay?
Yes, I'm gonna pull that up right now.
No problem. And as she is doing that, guys, this is the part that I would really encourage you to have a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen handy or a document open where you can take some notes, okay? Because if you were way off on your themes, I want this to be an opportunity for you guys as a class to talk about why you chose this theme and not this one, and so that we can help get our lit review organized.
Yes. Okay. So, my first theme was the need for carcass composting. So I kind of, rather than starting with like a history or some kind of background like that, I decided that right off the bat, I wanted to discuss why this research is important. Why do we have a need for it in the industry? And then my second theme, theme B, was benefits and challenges to composting offal and carcasses. So what that would look like from a practical standpoint in any type of, farming, ranching operation. What, like we just looked at that article, the biosecurity regarding composting, that could be something that could be a potential challenge. So kind of really diving into the pros and cons of doing this on a case-by-case basis. And then my third theme, theme C, was application of carcass composting system. So I went from why do we need it to what does it look like? How does it get messy on the farm to then how can this actually be applied in the industry? Is this something that we need to change regulation for? What does the future of carcass composting look like and how can it be applied? So I don't know how spot on that was, but that was just kind of the way that I chose to look at it. So
Great. Thank you for sharing.
of course.
I think that I think you're on track because you start big, right? General, and then you narrow it up and you drive that last theme into what the objectives are going to be. All right, cool. So just as a reminder, guys, what are our objectives? What's objective number 1?
Is it figuring out the effect of composting full animal carcasses in comparison to offal, or?
Close, right track, wrong train, Nathan. Thank you so much for speaking up though. So it's actually to determine the effects of bone-in and boneless offal on temperature, moisture, and pile height, right? So that's our first objective. What's our second objective?
Kind of same thing, to determine the differences between bone in and bone out offal, but as nutrient composition is concerned.
Yep, for nutrient composition. Okay. And what's the third thing?
A mound height of the temperature of compost mound height, isn't it?
Yes, the relationship between pile height and temperature in the compost mound. Cool. All right, thanks guys. So with those objectives kind of in the forefront of our brain, we want to make sure that the themes for our lit review are leading the reader towards that, right? So one of the challenges that I gave the last class was, or I may have gave Hannah, I can't remember, was to put yourself in your reader's position, okay? So what do you think they need to know before you get to the objectives? What do they need to know about compost? Okay, so with that in mind, okay, I would love to hear from more students about what your themes were that you submitted for part 1. And if you want some ideas on if those are correct, on the right track, or if you want some input on how to change them, now's the time to ask. All right, so who would like to volunteer to go next?
I could share my themes. Also had a question about those 3 objectives. Did we go over those at some other point? I feel like I remember us going over them. So those 3 objectives that you talked about.
Yeah, so Nathan, those objectives were derived from the null hypotheses from last week.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So my 3 themes were, theme A is just the benefits of composting, and then theme B is going to be the disadvantages of composting, and then my theme C, let's see, was just animal carcass composting in general.
Okay, I think that works too. So cool. Starting with like why composting is beneficial, and then some of the disadvantages. Do you want to, let's talk about that one real quick, Nathan. So what are some things that you're thinking about for the disadvantages? Have you had a chance to do some lit search?
Yeah, I got about 3 studies. Let's see. One of them talked about just the potential for like the process to not go properly because there's so many different kinds of bacterias, fungi, microorganisms, whatnot. That can be sources of pathogens, basically. That was
Okay.
one. And the in-text citation was the workers in the field of composting are often unaware of the hygienic composting criteria. So that could kind of add into the possibility.
Yeah,
Without
wear gloves. Wear gloves
yeah.
is the end of that.
Another one was, let's see. They're like with large scale composting that would be needed on a global scale. There's like high upfront investment and operating costs. Let's see. And there's like different levels of humidity that are ideal for certain kinds of composting. And basically like food and kitchen scraps have a higher humidity concentration, which isn't ideal for composting, which can lead to like anaerobic zones, colonization, stuff like that.
Cool.
So yeah, just there's an assortment of things.
Yeah, no, I think that's great because you start really general, right? So theme A is going to be benefits of composting. Okay, then you get into disadvantages of composting, and then you get into animal composting. So by the time you get to theme C, you're really focused, and that's going to take you right into that 5th paragraph where you end that paragraph with your objectives. So great.
Definitely. Sounds good.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing.
I kind of wanted to add on to what Nathan was talking about with the challenges of composting. I don't really have any of my like studies or anything nailed down, but something that I'm thinking about talking about in that topic with like disadvantages to the compost would be with our system, we don't really have any like crazy predators that we would be seeing out there trying to eat at the pile, but depending on where you would live, maybe that would look like an eagle flying in or something. Like I saw a picture and I was like, whoa, we don't have eagles in Chico, so that's fine. So something like that could be another challenge, or even just like as I was reading about rendering plants and what they do, it sounds like rendering is a great option, but it's expensive, and we already know why rendering isn't why we're doing this whole project in the beginning. So I thought that was interesting. As I'm learning more about composting, I'm also seeing all of the cool things that rendering does, and I'm like sad that all of the rendering plants are going away. So that's something cool that you could also discuss as a challenge to this.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Okay, thanks guys for sharing. Somebody else, would you guys like to share your themes?
I didn't, I was just thinking that we could, like, I would do like, for like theme A would be like the common methods of composting.
Okay.
And then I think like temperature and climate change, I think are kind of like the same thing. For like theme B, is I kind of wanted to focus on that. And then I think I wanted to like for like C go into like soil nutrients.
Cool. All right, so Hannah, thank you so much for sharing. Let's talk through yours real quick, okay? Because I think that we could potentially reorganize yours so that you're following like that upside down pyramid where you're starting really general and ending very specific. Okay, so I think soil nutrients as theme C is absolutely where it needs to be, okay, in that 3rd position. Temperature and climate change to me seems a lot bigger than composting methods though. Would you agree with that, or do you not agree with that?
I'm on the fence of it, to be honest.
Okay.
because I was kind of thinking like with temperature, just like I don't know if I want to go into like the global warming issues and stuff of like how our temperature just keeps rising as like the years go on.
Mhm.
If that's what I wanted to focus on, and that's why I kind of put it a little bit higher than the other one. But I mean, at the same time, I can see it as opposite as well, I guess.
Yeah. So, and I'd be curious what everybody else in the class thinks too, but I'm almost thinking like temperature climate change could also be part of like your hook sentence, right? So if that's a hook sentence, then maybe your first theme is about temperature and climate change because you are starting your conversation about it and you can dive a little bit more deeply into what climate change means. And then you could offer composting as a solution, right? And so your
Yeah.
theme B could be the composting methodologies, and theme C would be like the nutrients that compost is going to provide.
That makes sense. I do like that a lot. I've
Okay.
been struggling with the order of
Yeah,
what to
that's
put
part of
it
this
in.
process with the lit review is like, okay, these are the things I want to talk about, but it's a whole separate conversation and process to figure out how to organize them so they fit. So
Thank you.
cool. Thanks for sharing. All right, anybody else? All right, let me ask this question because it came up in the first session too. Let's talk about disease, right? So disease is kind of a related aspect to composting, right? So we might be able to use the composting, livestock mortality composting to decrease the incidence of disease, right? To control it. But when not done correctly, the process of livestock mortality composting could actually like create disease, right? So how does disease relate to our objectives? Or does it?
I think it would relate a little bit more to like the composition of like that objective rather than comparing bone in versus bone out, because I don't know how it would work like if those bone in versus bone out parts were diseased, but I would think that there would be enough material in either pile for it to happen. Whereas like if we're kind of looking at the components of the compost, maybe disease would relate a little bit more to that third objective. I'm not sure though.
Okay.
It's
So
definitely something to think about.
yeah,
I've
let me ask you guys this question. When you think about our three objectives, are we studying disease at all?
No, we're not.
No, we're not, right? So if you're going to talk about disease, it really needs to be in that first paragraph as like, hey, one way that we could control disease is livestock mortality composting. Okay, but you shouldn't have a whole entire theme about disease because we're not going to study it. Like I don't have the expertise to do that, right? And I really don't have the money to do that. That's the important part. I could figure out how to do it. I don't have the money to do it. Okay, so if we're not going to study it as a part of this research project, then let's not confuse the reader by including it as a theme. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Can you add it as like, because I completely changed my themes from what I turned in. And I was gonna do something kind of like what Nathan had, like disadvantages and advantages. And I was thinking of adding disease in the disadvantages theme. Would that make sense to do? Or should I not even include it at all?
I think if it's one sentence, Gabby, it's fine,
Okay.
but it shouldn't be like 5 sentences all about disease.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is, because it was kind of hard to find. It's not super hard to find like articles that have to do with disease and compost, but I just didn't know how to tie it back to like the original, I guess, theme or the objective. It's just hard to make it all back together. That's why I also had a hard time with my hook, because I
Yep.
didn't know what to put like in the hook.
Yeah, this is part of that messiness. So, you know, it's hard to get things to relate to one another when you haven't been through the entire process. And so that's what Brennan and I were talking about earlier, why we were kind of late starting, is like, this class needs a big redesign starting with this assignment. So I think if we were having this conversation after we had conducted the entire research project and written it up, it would be very different. But this is all stuff that, because it's my goal to mimic this research project as much as possible. And so 3 years ago, when I was trying to write a grant to get the funding to do this research, this was the same process I was having to go through, is like figure out and learn as much as I could about what composting or livestock mortality composting was, and then figure out what I could research with my facilities and our money. And disease, unfortunately, was not a part of that. So, okay, cool. So we've still got like 12 minutes, guys. I would love to talk through some of your other themes if you guys want. I'm going to hang out. I'll probably pause recording as we get towards the end of the hour, but if you guys want to hang out and just throw some ideas out at me, I would love to help you develop those. I will just say that in the email and the briefing that is on Blackboard, we are going to have 2 opportunities for a writing workshop this week, where you can come in with me into a Zoom session, ask questions one-on-one. I can help you kind of flesh stuff out, find literature, that type of thing. So it's an opportunity for some one-on-one help. And that'll be, our first one is tomorrow, 9:30 to 11 a.m. And there's a specific Zoom link for the writing workshop in Blackboard. And then there's another one on Friday morning, 8 to 9 a.m. All right, so feel free to jump off or stay on and keep talking to us about themes and ideas and organization, anything that has to do with part 1.
I'm having a really hard time with the hook sentence. I don't know.
Okay.
Like, I was trying to read I wrote down the example you gave us a while, I think like two weeks ago, about a good hook sentence versus a bad.
Yeah.
And I don't, is it supposed to be like generalized? Or I'm just having a really hard different, like making the, like, I guess the meaning of a hook and the theme, like thesis. Like, if that makes sense. I'm just trying to figure out how to even like write it.
Yeah. I smell what you're stepping in. Okay.
I was like, I don't know how to like word it. Like, I know how to write it. I think I know how to write a thesis, but I don't know if it's because it's a new word introduced to me, like a hook sentence, that I don't know what to do. And since you say you want it, like, it would just sound better if it had percentages in them. And if I'm doing like an advantages, disadvantages, and then like, I guess the advantages of animal composting, like, how would I tie that in with?
Yep. So I think we've got two different issues going, Gabby. So let's handle the hook sentence first. Okay. So the hook sentence is just to grab the attention of your reader with something that is related to your research project. Okay. And so the hook sentence is something that I write last. Okay, so I'll go through, I'll collect all of my themes, I'll put those paragraphs together, I'll write the conclusion paragraph, and then usually where I find a hook sentence is in that literature that I review.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you don't have to do this hook sentence, overview sentence, thesis. You don't have to do it in that order. You can feel free to bounce around. And so
that'll probably help better. That makes
okay.
sense.
Yeah, that's just one suggestion. Wait to write your hook sentence to last.
So I could just start with start like my research, the essay part, and then go back, because that would make more sense, because I just didn't know how to summarize everything because there's so much to do.
Yep. Yeah,
Okay,
so,
that's-
and the hook sentence is not a sentence where you have to summarize everything, right? Its purpose is to grab the attention of the reader. And we do that really well when we scare them with statistics. You didn't hear me say that.
All right,
That's the
thank
truth.
you.
Okay,
So I kind of,
go ahead.
I just wanted to like add on to what you were telling Gabby and kind of read what I put for my pre-part one as my hook sentence, because I also was struggling. I kind of did exactly what Dr. Diatley suggested. I did every other part of the assignment, and then I went back to the hook sentence to try to find some sort of statistic that would be appropriate. And I still don't love it, but what I put on that assignment was at least 45% of the tissue on a carcass is considered inedible. What is considered butcher's waste or offal can be expensive to dispose of by rendering, and with the limited availability of rendering plants, farmers must turn to alternate forms of offal disposal like composting.
Yeah.
So it's not like perfect, but that was something that I thought, okay, well, if almost half of a carcass is inedible and we need to figure out what to do with it, that could be a good segue into why we need to compost offal and butcher's waste and stuff like that.
Yep.
So
I think that's a beautiful sentence. In spirit. Okay. But as your editor, I'm going to hack the crap out of that. So it's too long. And so find a way to shorten it up.
okay.
But the spirit of it is absolutely right on. Cool. Thank you for sharing that.
So I have a question
Yeah.
going off of her hook sentence. So does the hook sentence have to be focused on the objective, or like could I read you my hook sentence and see if this is acceptable?
Go
Because
ahead.
mine's a lot more generalized. So composting gives us the opportunity to tackle the issue of food waste, and considering in 2018 the EPA estimated that only 4.1% of food wasted was composted. This shows that we have a lot of room to begin implementing more composting methods for further benefits.
That's
Is that
perfect.
too generalized? So that's
No.
not too generalized. Okay.
No. You have a
Okay, got it.
statistic in there. It's compost, and it's trying to hook the reader. So I like that.
Okay.
I think that's good.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, they don't all have to be the same. That's the cool part about this. The themes don't have to be the same for every class. Trust me, I've done that before for classes. It gets really boring to read 75 of them with the same format. So cool. Great, great, great. Awesome. So Gabby, hey, can we go back really quickly before you jump off? Because you actually had a second question there that I want to make sure that we hit, and it was about the thesis statement.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep in mind your thesis statement is a roadmap of your themes for your reader, right?
Okay.
So you're going to start that first introductory paragraph with a hook sentence. You're going to have a couple of sentences that is going to glue the hook sentence to the thesis statement. And so your thesis statement can take on the format of, let's see here. The objective of this literature review is to investigate the importance of animal mortality composting. And then you can list out like your 3 themes. Okay. So,
Okay, yeah.
yeah. So, and guys, don't forget that there's resources on Blackboard. There's like full papers from previous projects and classes that I would encourage you to go read, just to get an idea of how they brought all these things together. Okay, so in this case, like reading other people's work is going to be the best aid for you. Cool. What other questions do you guys have? We still have a few minutes.
I have one more question. So,
Yeah.
for, let's see, I think it was sorry, 1 second. Yeah, for the objective of the study at the end, so like you were talking about the 3 objectives we had, should those all be tied together in some way, like in the objective sentence?
Yeah, if you can get them
Kind
into
of in a-
one long
yeah.
sentence, I'm going to be a happy camper. So let me tell you the
Okay.
best way to do that, Nathan, is to say very simply, the objectives are this study are : 1, half parenthesis, I don't know what that is called,
Yeah, the apostrophe. or whatever,
Yeah.
something like
Determine the difference between temperature, pile height,
Moisture
and
and-
moisture
Yeah, yeah,
of bone in and bone out compost, comma, two, parenthesis thingy. Okay, the second one, and then comma and three,
gotcha.
parenthesis, and roll that way.
Okay.
It's a
okay.
long
Yeah.
sentence, but it brings everything together into one.
All right, cool. Yeah, because my objective was way off for the pre one. I kind of forgot about
Okay,
kind of tying it together, but yeah, it'll be better for the actual intro. So yeah, thank you.
you bet. Other questions? Luke, you like to participate. Do you want to share your themes?
Sure. My themes were, for theme A, I had current ways to handle livestock mortality in California,
Okay,
to kind of show why composting might be needed. And I don't know if our study is focused on California or not, because I know some other states have livestock mortality composting already
Yep.
as a legal option. And then my theme 2 was the economic viability of livestock mortality composting. And then theme C was how it works in other states, like the process of it in other states where it is legal.
Okay, cool. So I think theme A is great. And theme C, I think will work. You just need to probably get it a little bit more focused, so it's more related to the objectives. Theme B, can you turn that into a sentence and plug it back in the overview section of the first paragraph?
Yeah.
And the only reason that I say that is because we aren't doing an economic study in this research project.
Okay, yeah. I found a resource. I think it was the Montana State University Cooperative Extension,
Yep.
and they had a section in their paper where it was doing the process through rendering plants versus composting, listing out the prices,
Yeah.
and it saved around like $400 doing composting
Cool.
over rendering. So I'm sure I could find a statistic for that and maybe use that as my hook sentence.
Yeah. Or it could be like one or two of the sentences in the overview section of that first paragraph. It could, Luke, it could even be a really good ending sentence for theme A.
That like could potentially lead into theme B being
Yeah.
composting process in other states.
So that's the next part of this, is like, because we're kind of pulling the economic theme out of it, we need to come up with a third one for you. And so let's choose what it is first, and then we'll figure out how it fits. So does any of the themes that we've kind of talked about as a class today, are they of interest to you? Do you think they would fit?
I could probably, I was thinking of changing the process in other states just to the livestock mortality compost process.
Okay.
Just shorten that one up and make it a little bit more broad.
Okay.
And then the other one, the third one could maybe be pros of it. Or should I have pros be second and have economic viability lead into pros and then have process be third?
I like the idea of process third, because that's what we're doing in our study, right? We're really looking at temperature, moisture, and pile height, which is all part of the process. I don't know, ask your peers. What do you guys think?
I think it sounds good. I think it helps you go from broad to specific, if
Cool.
that makes sense.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Thanks, Luke, for letting me pick on you. It happens in range in this class a lot. Sorry. Awesome. Okay, guys. Well, we've got just a couple of more minutes before our fourth session starts. So I'm happy to stay on and answer questions. Brenna, thank you for talking me off a ledge. And yeah, if you guys are comfortable with this, I hope to see you at a writing session this week. So
Thank you for hosting those, and I will probably see you tomorrow.
okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, Luke.
Thank you, Dr. Beatley. That one definitely helped the questions I had.
Okay, good. Yeah, I changed format a little bit. I think that was the thing to do. So I'm glad I recorded this session. And I'm probably going to record the next session as well. And then I'm going to let the first discussion group know that we were a little bit more productive and proactive in this one. So awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so one of the ways that we have gotten everybody on the same page, or that I have been able to get everybody on the same page in previous classes, and making sure that we all have the same objective statement. And it is looking like, based on the feedback that or the pre-part ones that I've been through, and I'm going to get through the rest of those tomorrow, is that everybody is kind of on the same page. And that makes sense because I gave you all the same null hypotheses, right? So null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, objective should all be really closely related. All right, so the objective for the study that's going to show up as that last sentence in that 5th paragraph that Harry was just asking about needs to be something to the effect of: the objective of this study was to determine the effect of one half parenthesis thing, the difference between bone-in and boneless offal on temperature, moisture, and pile height, comma, 2 half parenthesis thingy, nutrient or the difference between nutrients of bone in and bone out offal, or something like that. You guys can make it pretty. And then 3, the relationship between temperature and pile height.
I'm sorry, you went really fast for me. What was the first one? How did you phrase that again?
Let me put it in the chat because it takes some wordsmithing, right? So, and this is the end of my day and my brain is dead. So
it should be on the Zoom recording too.
Yeah. Okay, so the objective of this study was, because we're always in past tense, even though we're still in process, right? Was to determine the difference between bone in and boneless offal on 1, temperature, moisture, and pile height. 2, nutrient composition. And 3, the relationship between temperature and pile height. Or something close to that. But do you see how you can get all 3 objectives into one sentence?
Yeah, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
You bet. So this whole practice of like getting as much information into the least amount of sentences as possible is coming from us as researchers being cheapskates. Because when we go to publish a peer-reviewed journal article, every page costs us at minimum $2,500. So I'm going to cut out all the
Do you
thes.
mind me asking just like why?
Because the journals have to make money.
Okay, for
So
sure.
if-
Just
yes.
curious.
So if they're only publishing like 10 journal articles a month, their income isn't super, super crazy. Okay, great.
No,
So-
that makes sense. And if yeah, just with the minimal monthly subscriptions. That's crazy though.
Yup. Welcome to research. Okay, awesome. Ryan, thank you so much for sharing. And are you feeling comfortable with your outline, Ryan?
Yeah, I feel better about them now. I think just the objective. I wasn't sure, like in the video, you talked about narrowing it in, and that was pretty much my main concern, that it did that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think it does. Awesome. Anybody else want to share what their themes are? You guys can share. You can share everything. You can share hook sentence, everything. Go ahead.
Can I, if I'm being honest, mine is so, I think, and I know I emailed you, I think I just really misunderstood what we were doing. And so
Okay.
I think it's just a little easier right now for me just to, if it's cool, to just like listen and hear of like specifically of just like what you want. Because like I really want to produce like a good paper that I want to learn how to produce a good paper, period.
Yeah, no, that it's cool. It's cool. This is normally something, guys, that we would do in person in a lecture or a discussion, and we would bounce ideas off of people. It's really hard to do that in this online setting. So I'm fine with, yeah, and Griffin, you and I have already talked. So but if anybody else wants to step up, I would love to hear your themes or your hook sentence or your thesis statement or your objectives.
I can share my themes again if you'd like, Dr. Deotley.
Hannah, let's if nobody else wants to, then we'll jump in with you, okay?
I can share my themes real quick, Casey.
Okay, go ahead, Hunter.
Mine are kind of along the same lines as Ryan's were, but for theme A, I had like achievability, like doability, how like all the five W words basically, how it can be done, all of that. My theme B was like the safety of the project, basically, like the effects of the ground and whatever it could happen. And then theme C would have been like sustainability and how it could save money and change the kind of game a little bit.
Okay. So Hunter, I think theme A is totally fine because you're explaining what composting is and why it works. Okay, so that's great. theme B, I like, but let's find a different theme for B because we're not studying it. Okay. So we aren't studying it yet, right? So especially on the water quality side, that's going to really come when we apply the compost to the pastures, right? So, but in this study, we don't get to study it. And that goes for just for you guys, that is the same thing for disease. So I saw a lot of themes that were around disease and how compost could either help prevent disease, or if not done correctly, composting could actually not hinder, oh, my words are leaving me, cause disease, right? So, but in this study, are we studying disease?
No,
No.
where it's bone in and bone out, correct?
Correct. And it's the process and it's the nutrients. Okay. So because we aren't really studying it, let's not make it an entire theme. Okay.
So it would be kind of like the composition, I guess.
Yeah. Composition
Yeah.
would work. And
Okay.
Hunter, if you want to mention something about like water quality or something, those like one sentence or half a sentence or whatever it is, that stuff could go back up where the overview sentences are in the first paragraph. Okay. So that if it fits, okay. So that's just something to think about too. All right. So
Thank you.
Yeah. So instead of kind of safety, water quality theme, what's another theme that you could go with based off of other comments from your peers?
I just put like composition, basically, like micro environment, kind of.
Yeah. So like what composting can contribute to the soil from a nutrient standpoint?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And then what about, so if we're going to do that, what's theme C going to be? So because you originally had it as like safety and it was
No, like it was
money.
Sustainability, I think.
Yeah. So sustainability to me is actually a big one. So what if you reorganized your themes and did sustainability first, then compost, and then composition?
Okay.
The nutrient composition would roll right in to the objectives.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That works. Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. Anybody else want to share themes?
Can you see me?
Yes, please do, Marcy.
So mine were kind of on the same lines. We're all kind of in that area, that same area. But my curiosity was if my theme A was too broad.
Okay.
And my theme A was why alternatives to livestock mortality resources need to be established. So it was the need for it. And then theme B was almost a kind of a compare and contrast. Like I said, it's kind of along the lines of Ryan's, kind of a compare and contrast of alternatives that are working.
Okay.
And then theme C was the environmental impacts that livestock mortality composting have. So it's basically, all kind of the same.
Okay. So I think there is a way, Marcy, to focus yours a little bit more because they are all kind of really broad. So why alternatives need to be established is that one, I'll be honest, is probably going to be hard to find a lot of peer-reviewed research on. Okay, because that's more like of a popular press or an issues type thing. So it could also be general knowledge, right? So we know that we don't have a ton of rendering plants, and so we know we need alternatives. So I'm wondering if you can actually morph that into 1 to 2 sentences to go up in that first paragraph, in the kind of the overview section. And then your first theme could be introducing compost and why it works.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then maybe your second theme is environmental impacts. So, right, we've got compost, environmental impacts of compost. And then your third theme, let's think through that a little bit. It probably needs to be something completely, not completely different, but more focused. So like, you know, the process of compost, like this is what the process is, or this is what problems are with the process. The problems with the process you can absolutely find in peer-reviewed literature. It could also be a combination of all of things to do with all 3 objectives, right? So it could be something to do with, you know, process from a temperature standpoint, or a nutrient contribution standpoint, or the relationship between some of the traits.
Okay, that makes absolute sense. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. All right, we still got like 10 minutes. Anybody else want some help with themes or hook sentences or other aspects of the outline?
Can I go next?
Great, Harry, bring it on.
So, so my objective on the conclusion part was to determine if there's a difference between bone-in and bone-out offal material in composting, if they affect the nutrient compost components of the cured product. So the theme A was on optimal conditions for the microorganisms to flourish during the composting process in bone-in and bone-out material.
Okay.
And the theme B was structural differences between soft tissue and hard tissue of the carcass.
Okay.
And the theme C is the mechanism differences of how microorganisms break down soft tissue and hard tissue. And I usually talk about what composting is in the introduction part.
Okay, that first paragraph.
Yes.
Cool. So let me ask you a question really quickly about theme C. So with the mechanisms of the organism, are you mentioning things in there like how temperature could affect microorganisms or moisture?
More about the how should I say, like what kind of things microorganisms use to break down those tissues. That's actually what I was trying to deliver.
Okay. I like that. My only concern is that we're not like measuring any of those organisms in our research study. We're really focused on things that can affect the process, like catalysts, right? Like temperature can be a catalyst and moisture can be a catalyst for compost. So could you,
can I just, can I say like how the mechanisms will be affected by the temperature or moisture in the theme C?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
That would be perfect. That would be perfect.
Got it. Thank you.
You bet. All right, cool. So you guys see how you can you can do this a bunch of different ways. You can, look at broad functional aspect of compost, or you can, like Harry did, and go really super deep into the mechanisms and stuff. Okay, there's lots of ways to introduce this concept. So, sweet. Other themes. And we don't have to just talk about themes, guys, especially if you're kind of getting some good ideas on how to edit yours. We could talk hook sentences. So I know in the last session, we had some, a really good question about a hook sentence too.
Yeah, Casey, in relationship to hook sentences, so you said the best is to, like your examples that you showed, like on the brewer's yeast and the other examples that you showed, just kind of, like you said, grasping the reader's attention, but then putting in, you know, a good statistical data.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So Marcy, you ask a good question. So the hook sentence, its job is to grab the reader's attention, and we can do that more effectively by using statistics. Its second job is to kind of clue the reader into what they're going to be reading about. So as long as you have like compost, something associated with the hook sentence, or you're moving towards composting being a solution to it, you're good. So one thing that we did in the last session, and it'll be on the recording, but there were a couple people that read their hook sentences and we just kind of confirmed or denied or edited, if you guys wanted to do that. Okay, so I think Diana put hers in the chat. So let me look at it because I know she's having audio issues. Okay, so theme A was which environments would be appropriate for the rendering process. Theme B would be longevity of carcass disposal with or without bone fragments. And theme C would be common practice of composting. So environments, longevity, common practice. So Diana, I think that based on what I think you're trying to communicate here, I think I would switch theme A and theme B in their order. I think that longevity of carcass disposal is a more broad issue than the environments for rendering. But I could be wrong. I may not be capturing everything that you are wanting to communicate there. Cool, cool, cool. All right, guys. Well, we've got 5 minutes left. I will stay on mostly because it's now about to pour down rain and I want to avoid getting on a tractor and baling hay as long as possible. So if you guys want to have some more conversation about this, we can absolutely do that. Please, if you can, drop into one of the writing sessions. So tomorrow, 9:30 to 11. Or Friday 8 to 9, and both of the Zoom links are built into Blackboard. So I hope you guys can stop by. And if those for some reason don't work, I do have the bookings function thingy though kind of figured out, so you can book an appointment as well. It's just time is getting really tight this week. It's a busy week. So
Thank you, Casey.
okay, cool. You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Casey, for letting me sit in and all the lectures today.
Yeah, no problem, Hannah. Anytime.
Yeah, definitely helped. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.